Yeah, I would say the 49ers. I would say the way they've been playing the past couple games, we talked about yesterday how they had trouble stopping the run. And I think the Chiefs and Andy Reid are going to lean on the run. And you got a guy like Pacheco, who's been in the Super Bowl, played well in the Super Bowl last year. And you got a guy like Patrick Mahomes, who the defense is going to be keen on. First thing you want to do is establish the run. So I think if they can't stop the run, if they can't find a way to get off the field, they ain't going to be able to play complementary football. Special teams is going to have trouble. Offense is going to have trouble. The name of the game is complementary football, and to do that, you have to stop the run, get off the field, and limit the time of possession.
Yeah, I look at both these offenses. They're both loaded, and you'd say, well, the Chiefs' offense hasn't been what we expected, and their defense is actually leading the way. That's fine. Here's the secret, and it's not such a secret as Josh is laying here. Niners defense hasn't been special at all.
Yeah.
Like, the Niners defense has not been special. Take a look at these numbers here. This is as mediocre as it gets. There's 32 teams in the league. They're 14th, 14th, 18th, 13th. You heard there's been some talk about how hard they go and whether there's been some plays where they don't go full bore. Yeah. I look at these names: Bosa, Armstead, Hargrave, Chase Young, Fred Warner, Randy Gregory. You're talking about major stars in this league.
Easy.
Those are guys that you're supposed to be, all-pro, potential Hall of Fame names. And I do think that way, that they have that in them. And, they asked Bosa about, what do you think of last time you guys played in the Super Bowl? What do you remember? He's like, I remember being held a lot. And that was a great quote, and he was held a ton, and they didn't call any of them. And on the Jet Crisp Wasp, if you're watching that play, which is a legendary play, Bosa's getting held, and we know it. But how often do you get a chance to get redemption and get a chance to answer that bell and get a chance to get back off the mat? All those guys, Armstead, Bosa specifically, these are very proud defenders and proud pass rushers. They have not had a defense that is worthy of what those guys can do. Armstead, Bosa, Warner, those are the three main guys that were there. But when you add Chase Young and you add Hargrave and you add Sebastian Joseph Day and you add all these different, Logan Ryan, you're adding all these names who are stars who have been in this league for a while. You can't be mediocre, and you certainly can't be mediocre against Patrick Mahomes. This is a challenge to those 49ers defensive players and to Steve Wilks, the defensive coordinator. It's got to be better than it's been, because as great as the Packers and the Lions are, they ain't the Chiefs.
Yep. Peter, as you listed all the name of these 49er players, it made me think that people are going to be watching the Super Bowl who haven't watched the season, and they're going to think the 49ers have the best defense because of those names, the Bosas, the Warrens, the players who've led this. They would be wrong. The Chiefs have been one of the best, if not the best defense in football this year. The numbers have told they've been the second-ranked defense in the league. They are the group. But I think they also have the most pressure in this game. Because as the quote-unquote best defense, as the youngest defense in football, there are going to be moments where they're going to be pressed and they're going to have to win their one-on-one matchups against an elite group of weapons. And I think the playoffs have maybe blinded us a little bit of how good the 49ers' weapons are, because they've fall behind and they've had to come back. But you've got Deebo Samuel, you've got Brandon Ayuk, you've got George Kittle, you got Christian McCaffrey, maybe the best collection.
You got Trent Williams.
Trent Williams, who's a weapon in his own.
Yeah.
So they may have the best collection of weapons in the league, and they're physical. They hit. And this is my favorite matchup in this game. The physicality of the 49ers receiving group versus the physicality of the Chiefs defensive backs. I can't wait. It's going to be hidden. And I love hidden. And so you get L'Jarius Sneed, who I think is one of the most underrated players in the league. He forced that fumble on Zay Flowers in the AFC Championship game to help them clinch it up. He has been a lead against top receivers all game. Maybe he gets Brandon Ayuk. Maybe he gets Deebo. L'Jarius Sneed, who you've talked about making the game-changing play, he's excellent there. I want to see who can match the physicality, and the 49ers have 2 weeks to plan with Kyle Shanahan, using all their motion. They have seen these physical teams play them this year, and they've used that pre-snap motion. They're top 3 in the league in that category to get their receivers away from it, so they can use Deebo and Brandon Ayuk to dictate that physicality. The more physical group in that wide receiver DB battle, I think they win this Super Bowl.
I'd love to ask the defensive coordinators in this game or around the league, the Wilks, the Spagnuolos, the Brian Floreses of the world, would you rather be a great second half of the season defense or a great second half of the game defense? I'd probably want to build as the season goes on and not have to rely on the fact that the 49ers defense has had a tall task all season long of holding teams when their offense just can't get things going in the first half. 3 times this season in really important games, I go back to week 5, they held the Cowboys to just 3 points in in the second half. It's like things change at halftime for the 49ers defense. Week 10, Jaguars scoreless in the second half. Week 17, Commanders scoreless in the second half. 11 games this season, 7 points or less allowed by this 49ers defense. You say it that way, you could say it with an air of optimism, or you could say this defense has to start playing better earlier in the game and not allow points earlier in the game because, again, we say it time and time again, despite what you've thought about Andy Reid and perhaps allowing leads in big games, this Chiefs team just feels like one offensively that if they get the lead, they will not let you back in. And this defense should not have to be relied upon in the second half the way that they have had to last week against, or 2 weeks ago against the Lions.
I would say 49ers are definitely a defense that plays from the lead really well.
Yeah.
You want to send those 4 guys at the quarterback and take everybody else and drop them into coverage, knowing the team is going to pass. But then when you playing from behind and now the team is running the ball, and now you got to bring more people into the box, and now that creates the bigger plays down the field. So definitely, if they want to have a chance, they have to play from a lead so that way the defense doesn't have to feel like they have to stop Patrick Mahomes, because we all know that's not happening.
There's a lasting image I have, or a lasting sequence I have that's funny. We should probably dig it up on tomorrow's show. Maybe we will. Your quarterback, Kirk Cousins, did that program on Netflix, The Quarterback, and we got a chance. It was awesome, right? Mahomes was too. There's a sequence in there where Mahomes is talking about just how dominant Nick Bosa is and how much he respects Nick Bosa and what a pain in the butt Nick Bosa is. I don't think Bosa's had the season that maybe a TJ Watt or a Myles Garrett or some of these other elite pass rushers have had. He's been laying in the weeds. Jawan Taylor on one side, a backup on the other side.
Yep.
This might be the Nick Bosa game, and here's a Defensive Player of the Year that we don't even talk about this season.
Right.
He could go absolutely bonkers, 3 sacks, and then we're saying, oh, well, of course, it was Nick Bosa. That's him all along. We knew that from the show last summer.
And you can argue that the 49ers are due, right? We talked about them playing poorly maybe the last couple of games and getting away with it in the playoffs. They have the talent. They are due for an explosion. And I want to tell you this, because if you look at Patrick Mahomes' record, you see all the wins, but he does have 3 playoff losses. And there's a common thread in those 3 playoff losses. I dug it up. In the 2018 loss against the Brady in the AFC Championship game, 0 sacks on Tom Brady. In the Super Bowl against Tom Brady and the Bucs, 1 sack on Tom Brady. In the AFC Championship game from the 21 season against Joe Burrow, 1 sack on Joe Burrow. When they don't get pass rush on the quarterback, they tend to lose. And so what you talked about them getting ahead as far as the 49ers playing with that league, that's why I think the Chiefs defense has to play well up front, and they won't have Charles Omenihu, who is out for it with a torn ACL. He had 7 sacks and 11 gains for them, so more pressure on Chris Jones and that defensive line to get pressure on Brock Purdy.
And again, Mahomes talked about after that Ravens game how it's allowed him to play with a little bit more freedom and laxity maybe in his game when he knows his defense is playing at a certain level, but without that huge absence is a big deal. Nick Bosa is probably top 5 players you don't want to be laying in the weeds. When you
haven't heard his name.
No, you don't, but yet he will come for you.
There is